Hello YouTube, welcome back to Nutkin Farm. I thought I'd done my last video for 2022, but I got time to sneak in another one as I was working on some of the babies, getting the weeds out from amongst the trunks, feeding them a bit of food. In this case, this particular round, I've given them each a handful of Osmocote. And Osmocote, for those of you who don't know it, is a resin-coated fertilizer. This particular model of it breaks down over 12 months, gradually releasing nutrients into the soil as it rains. So it sort of requires water to release, but the resin-soaked modules then sort of swell up and drip feed the tree slow release nutrients over a wide spectrum of goodies, including those important trace elements like boron. So I've done that, but the reason for the video is to revisit the ground cover project that I have in place. For those of you watching the channel a long time, you'll know that I took over an unhealthy farm that had been neglected for many years in terms of proper conventional agricultural standards, and I've brought it back to some extent. It's still on the way back, but one of the things I have to deal with on a regular basis is the kind of grass growing between the trees. Now, either, if you're in the industry, you'll either buy into somebody else's property and inherit the problems or good things that they've got with their property, or you'll start afresh. And so I'm going to try and make this video relevant to both groups of people. What you're looking at here is a grass from Africa, and hello to my African subscribers. I don't hate you for this, I just hate your grass. This is Soteria. It's the worst possible grass you'd want to plant in a macadamia orchard. While it does grow nice and thickly, and it certainly rebounds well after stress, it's too quick growing. It's extremely quickly growing. It was designed as a cattle feed grass, not very high quality cattle feed, but fast cattle feed, sort of like McDonald's for cows. You have to give them supplements or else they get nutrient imbalances. That's not what you want on your macadamia farm. But what do you want? Because when you grow rows of baby trees like these, you know that the trees are at one point going to grow up. There'll be some shade under the trees, and the grasses that you put there to begin with might not be terribly shade tolerant, and you could run into erosion problems sooner than you might by sort of pruning and canopy management. So what's good? Here in New South Wales and Queensland, for many years, the favourite variety of ground cover between your rows of trees has been smother grass. Ironically, that's from Africa as well, or so I'm told. Smother grass is a very soft, leafy grass that has some shade tolerance, grows reasonably well, spreads reasonably well, doesn't grow too high too fast, and is okay for harvesting off because it's a nice soft leaf grass. The harvesters can get in amongst it and pull up the nuts out of smother grass. That's been the traditional wisdom for a while. Now, those who are going on about regenerative agriculture, they have a different view, and they say, no, you don't want a monoculture under your macadamia trees. You want a mixture of things that can provide benefit for your trees, as well as just a blockage for erosion. And so they advocate things like legumes, in some cases tillage radish and other things that break up the soil, making sure that some deep-rooted crops can get into the soil and stop it from compacting and allow it to accept nutrients. Legumes, any legume, has the ability to fix nitrogen in the soil, that is, take it out of the atmosphere, bring it down to the root level, and contribute nitrogen, which is then available to other plants, including your trees. And that's now sort of a growing idea in terms of growing these in between your trees and also underneath them. There's a mohawk theory, which means that between these two rows that you see here, right in between them, you would have a strip going along, imagine a strip going along of flowers, weeds, other things that you just don't mow, that attracts pollinators, beneficial insects, that sort of thing. Again, that's a little bit controversial. I'm sure it is very good for the pollinators. It's also very good for rats as a hiding place. It creates a little highway for them so that they can avoid detection by their predators. And partly on that basis, that's a reason why I don't do mohawks, partly because I'm very dependent on owls for my rat control, and they are awesome. So back to my own experiment and what I've done, and I've mentioned this in a few other videos, but it's starting to mature now. My favourite ground cover is this one. It's called Pinto Peanut. You can see it by its yellow flowers, and it's spreading rather nicely from where I planted it, which was just under the tree there. That's where it started, and it has now spread out, and it's continuing to spread really very well. Those yellow flowers, believe it or not, plunge into the soil when they're ready and create a tiny little peanut, which isn't edible. And then it spreads both by that seed and also by running along the ground. The other ground cover that I'm trying to sow in amongst the Soteria that you see over there is clover. Now, clover comes in many different varieties. I've done my research on these, and I narrowed down on two that I thought were the best for macadamia orchards. One is New Zealand white clover. It's not a proprietary clover, so it tends to be quite cheap. We're looking here at a small leaf clover. So sort of hard to see on YouTube because you can't obviously be with me here and see how small the leaves are. But bear in mind, I've just come over this clover with a mower on a 2-inch cut, which is as close as I really dare go on these grounds. Now, that clover's untouched. It's low to the ground. Even the flowers are untouched. It's really nice, low to the ground. It spreads well. It puts nitrogen into the soil. It seems to compete with the Soteria. So there's a chopped off block of Soteria. There's clover in amongst it. And of course, the good news is if you keep mowing the Soteria before it reaches seed head stage, Soteria can't reproduce. And clover, like Pinto Peanut, they seem to work well together, undermine other grasses. They literally get underneath them and spread their way around. Here's another example of Pinto there. So if you're in an existing orchard, you've got a bad patch of grass cover, or you want to add some variety, as the agronomists are now sort of suggesting, where's the best place to plant it? Well, I, in general, planted my Pinto Peanut right underneath the macadamia trees when I first planted them. And in this trial block here, that sort of had the most success of any. The reason for that primarily is because the trees get the most TLC, they get the fertilizer, the Pinto Peanut borrows a little bit of that and probably contributes to its health. But I have, in the interrow here in the middle, also done some sowing of Pinto Peanut and moreover clover. Now, the clover seed you can oversow, and that is you simply throw it around. You don't have to dig it into the soil, and if you sow it at the right time, it will spread. Now, there's a nice mix of clover and Pinto, all underneath mower level. That's how close to the ground it grows, and that is what you want. So you can oversow the clover. This, I'm not sure if this is New Zealand white or a proprietary variety I tried, which is quartz. That's another small leaf clover. I've put both down here at various times, so I can't sort of narrow the experiment down. All I can say to you is that clover has definitely taken off here. I'm pretty sure it's my seeding, not clover that was naturally here, partly because before I planted this block, it was pure Soteria. Also, when I go to my baby block of ours, that is pure Soteria. And I'm going to oversow some clover there shortly because it's rainy weather or slightly drizzly weather. It's a warm time of year. Clover is flowering, and when you see flowering clover, it's generally a good time to sow clover seeds because that's when the clover seems to be reproducing by itself. And so here, virgin territory, pure Soteria, gaps in the ground because Soteria is a clumping grass, plenty of grass cover on the actual ground itself. And I've managed to get this down to a 2-inch cut as well, so now's the time. Clover will go down. Now, if you have a blank block and you're planting a macadamia orchard from scratch, you've got a few more options, but they can be a little bit expensive. There are some guides, including the old New South Wales Department of Primary Industries guide, that say you can rip an entire field of macadamias. One method is to rip it all up with a ripper, see what grows back in terms of weeds, spray them all with herbicide to make sure everything's dead, and then go in and sow your preferred grass, whether that be clover, smother grass or whatever. The other method is to use the existing grass and ground cover that's there, only till the rows that you're going to plant, and then try and manage the grass somehow like I'm managing this grass. Look, if I was starting from scratch, I'd have to say, despite a sort of a negative feeling about scorched earth, I probably would rip the ground or plough it up and try and get rid of negative species, particularly if you've got something like this. You'd want to try and eradicate that if you can. Start again with grass. Really, when you consider that mowing is the biggest job you do on a farm, it takes the most hours, the most diesel. You have to recognise the fact that the cost you spend on getting the grass right from the beginning is probably going to pay for itself many, many times over a sort of 40, 50 year period when you've got the farm. So it's something to consider if you're looking at planting a new paddock of macadamias. For me and my paddock, I didn't really have the budget to do that. So I'm going to be oversowing with some clover in this new block of variety R. I think the variety I'll be planting is quartz, because that's what I have at the moment. It's coated in a special lime coating, which makes it unattractive to birds or other things that might eat the seed, and also gives the clover just that little bit of a good start in life, because clover likes a bit of lime. Obviously, this advice will vary for where you are in the world. All I would say is that you should look for the following attributes: low growing, a legume if possible, which puts nitrogen into the soil for you and gives you enormous kilos worth of nitrogen free every year as fertilizer, and perhaps a little bit of variety, so that in certain years when one kind of ground cover might do poorly, such as in drought, you might have another backup variety there that does rather better. My combination is pinto peanut and clover. I'll keep updating this every couple of years or so if I'm still making these videos, and we'll see how that goes. So over to you guys. If you have recommendations for a good ground cover for your own orchard, I'd love you to contribute to the field of knowledge of these things and put it in the comments below. I'm off to do some more fertilising now, so I will sign off and wish you all a very happy new year. Thanks for watching.